Let me say this. Initially, you're probably going to think that I've wandered into the wrong rally. I haven't, but if I were Tony Nicholson, I would want to go. That man has got no power of anything except to communicate by blinking. He is not terminally ill. It is not just going to happen in the course of nature. He is not in severe pain, but he was fit and healthy until the health blow that left him like that, and he wants to go, and so would I. Now, I don't say that lightly, I say it for this reason. We are in danger sometimes of dismissing too easily those who actually say, my life is not worth living. And if we dismiss it every time, we actually paint ourselves as insensitive. And although we talk about care, very often what people think they're hearing from us is that we don't actually care. Now, I haven't walked into the wrong rally for this reason. Hard cases make very, very bad law. I fully understand where Tony Nicholson is coming from. I understand where his family is coming from. Yes, he has got other options. Nobody in this country can be compelled to take food and fluids, but refusing them is a long, slow, and painful death, and he wants a quicker one. Yes, doubtless a public subscription could be got up, and he could make the very difficult journey to Dignitas, but he says, I want it here. And we've got to at least concede that we understand where he's coming from. And if you have any doubts about it, just lie down flat and don't move anything except your eyes and see how long you can keep it up. See how long you can keep it up. And yes, of course, there are magnificent examples of people who've overcome all of that. There's Stephen Hawking, there's the Whitbread Prize winner, Christy Nolan. But not everybody, and particularly those who have been normally fit and active, can face decades ahead of that sort of existence. So, okay, let's make it clear that we understand and that we're not trying to inflict our values on people who are suffering what would be unimaginable to most of us. So why is it, if we do understand that nevertheless we resist, as completely as we do, any change in the law? It is straightforwardly that no law which allows people to depart of their own volition with assistance, that no law which allows that can possibly be contained. And that is the big danger. Now, David quoted to you, because I was here for this bit, the requirement that is proposed under any new law to have the signature of 2 doctors saying whatever might be specified, that you're terminally ill, that you're in great pain, that you are mentally competent, whatever it may be. And people will quote that back and say, there will be sufficient safeguards. Oh yeah. When the 1967 Abortion Act was brought in, Parliament was told this won't lead to abortion on demand. The law is very clear. You've got to have the signature of 2 doctors. There's got to be a greater danger from carrying on the pregnancy than in having it terminated. Oh no, all the provisions are there. 7 million unborn children later, having been aborted, that is pretty hollow. Now that is how you cannot build safeguards into law to make sure that they are never abused. And it wouldn't be very long. In fact, I don't think it would be 5 minutes before whatever law was brought in would be pushed. Let's take an obvious case. I think anybody bringing in such a law would insist on mental competence. You must know what you're doing. So, we have two people side by side in a hospital, in a hospice, wherever you like to imagine them. They're side by side in adjacent beds. One is mentally competent. The other is not. Both are terminally and very, very painfully ill. One can say, I want to go. The other one can't. How long do you suppose you could maintain that distinction? The pressure to let the poor suffering mortal who couldn't actually claim mental competence also to go would be enormous. And if you did that, you would have jumped folks from voluntary to involuntary euthanasia in one single stroke. And then, of course, it's got to be on the specific request of the individual. Can't be on the request of another individual. But what happens if the specific individual can't actually consent at the time, but has in the past indicated to family that this is what they would like? You try preserving the distinction between those who are still compos mentis enough to say, I want to go, and the person in a coma who has said, allegedly at some stage, he wants to go, but nobody can actually prove it. How long do you think you would sustain a requirement? It must be the request of the person. And then, of course, people can request it for all the wrong reasons. Look at Dignitas in Switzerland. The people who go there aren't all painfully and terminally ill. Yeah, most of them are. Some of them aren't. Some of them aren't even ill. Some of them are depressed. Some of them simply want to go with the person who is already dying. Dignitas doesn't actually look after life. It is an instrument for death. And that's what any change in the law would bring. Pushing at the boundaries of the law. So you have two people appearing on television and one says, I'm in huge pain, I've got no hope, I want to go. And the other says, I'm in huge pain, I have got hope, but I still want to go. And you say no to the second one. For how long? Until you get another campaign from people saying, we know when our lives are worth living. Now, actually, people do know, by and large, when their lives are no longer worth living. Sometimes they decide that prematurely, but sometimes they decide it quite rationally. And that's why I said right at the beginning, we must show that we understand that. But you can imagine an elderly person, incontinent, not yet demented, but pretty hopeless. Can't do very much. And she thinks, or it could even be he thinks, I'm a burden to those around me. I want to go. Yes, doctor, I'm saying it. I'm mentally competent. I know exactly what I'm doing. I want to go. Undeniably that person deciding it. Undeniably mentally competent. Undeniably going to go anyway sometime because we all do. You can't preserve the rigidity of safeguards in law. And that is why, not because I deny, and I have never denied, that there is a very small minority of people for whom life has genuinely become unbearable, and it's never going to get any better. I do understand that. But I also understand from long experience that you can never devise a law the safeguards of which are absolutely unbreachable. Holland shows that. Oregon shows that. Dignitas shows that. It wouldn't be any different here. And so, I think that we should always, and I'm delighted that we've got an atheist leading the charge, because very often people portray it. I was on a radio program recently, and the introduction was, do you think people should have control over their own exit? Or do you believe so strongly in God that that is wrong? And I did say, look, I do believe strongly in God, but actually there are plenty of people who don't, who take my line on this. And we don't hear enough of them, so lots more, please. And that is another thing. When you're approaching MPs, when you're campaigning, don't always make a great thing of going along as a church group. Now, that's not because I want people to disown their faith, I certainly don't. But I do want MPs to understand that this argument is not just the prerogative of those who are motivated by faith. It is also the argument of those who are motivated by nothing more than wanting to protect some of the most vulnerable over future generations, because you might control it for 12 months or so. So I think it is very important, when you go to see your MP, make sure that the argument you present always begins with, I do understand that some people genuinely believe their lives aren't worth living, and I respect that. Not to know they've got it wrong, even if you think they have, doesn't matter. And I respect that. But it's crucial that we do that. It's crucial that we don't always mount our opposition on the basis of our faith. As I say, I'm not saying deny it, but don't necessarily always push that to the fore. Because otherwise, what you will find is that this will be presented to the nation as an argument between self-determination and the church. That's how it will be presented. So we don't need that to gain ground. We need to be very careful to say every single time, this isn't just a matter of religion. Do go to see your MP. Please don't all go at once. Wastes the opportunity. Divide up. If you're confident enough to go on your own, let 6 of you go on your own, week after week, until he's sick of hearing about it. If you're not quite confident to go on your own, divide yourselves into 2 and go up onto the ark, 2 by 2, over weeks and weeks and weeks, until he's sick of it. When you write, don't write a standard letter, because all that needs is a standard reply, and these days you just press a button on a computer. No. Write individual letters with individual arguments, demanding responses to individual points. These things all have a tremendous impact. And yes, do sign e-petitions, because whereas if it's an ordinary petition, MPs don't take any notice. Because we all know that you could stand outside Sainsbury's on a Saturday morning with a petition in your hand that said, Eskimos need a bit more heat, and people would sign. So MPs don't take any notice, but an e-petition is different. You've actually got to go into the site, you've got to register, you've got to go through the procedures. You mean it. If you sign an e-petition, it means you want to sign it. So do that. There are loads of ways of communicating with your MP. But please, however heretical it may sound, always acknowledge some people want to go, and in their position, probably we would. Don't change the law on their behalf.